Hi there. I'm Pastor John, and I am so excited that you've joined us for the 6 Anchors small group series. I trust that you're going to learn a lot during this time together, and that over the next few weeks, you're going to make some new friends and have a new perspective on life, and even grow a lot of strength of character. That the storms of life are not going to be nearly as intimidating as they were in the past. Now, today we're going to be talking about the anchor of hope, but we're talking about anchors. What are we even talking about in the first place? Well, at sea, there are 2 different types of anchors that we experience. One is a typical anchor that you would use in a harbor. Now, this is a anchor that keeps the ship from going adrift. Even on a fairly calm day with a gentle breeze against a very large ship will cause that ship to slowly drift. It can collide into other ships, it can collide into the dock, it can hit the rocks. Even though it's a very subtle movement, that drift can cause serious damage. And so there's a special type of anchor that's used during those times of drift when you're in port. But there's also another kind of anchor called a sea anchor. You might be miles at sea and the bottom of the ocean can be many miles below you and you don't have a chain that long. But there's a kind of a drag anchor. Now those are anchors designed when you're in a storm. Because when you're in a storm, it's not so much the drifting that's an issue, it's getting swamped by the waves, particularly waves that hit you from the side. When you're in a storm in a ship, you want to be facing right into the wind, right into the waves, and the ship is designed to go through that. And the drag anchor keeps the ship stable, keeps the ship facing the right direction, and allows it to survive the worst of the waves. Well, we're not going to teach you how to be better sailors. We're trying to learn how we can be better people. But I want you to pause the tape here just a minute and discuss these questions just amongst yourself. First, is in our lives, how can people slowly drift into trouble? Have you ever seen an example of this yourself? Has this ever happened to you? What kind of storms do people face in their lives? Have you ever felt like you're being swamped by the waves? What kind of storms have you faced in your life? Discuss these for the next few minutes. With our series with the 6 anchors, today we're going to focus on just one of those anchors, and it's the anchor of hope. Now, unfortunately, we're going to be going back to a very ancient book called the Bible, and it wasn't written in English. And so sometimes when you're moving from one language to another, issues of translation sometimes can be confusing. And that word hope in the Bible means something slightly different than it does in English. And it's good to know what the Bible means when it talks about hope. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple things what the Bible doesn't mean when it says hope. First thing the Bible doesn't mean when it talks about hope is that hope is uncertainty. Now in English, often we use the word hope in terms of uncertainty. I hope I'm going to win the lottery. I hope the Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup. We use the word hope when we're talking about things that we really aren't sure about, that we just kind of hope. It's not what the Bible means. Second thing that hope doesn't mean is hope isn't wishful thinking. Now, we use the English word hope like that a lot. Once again, I hope the Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup. Good luck with that. We use it all the time for not something that we're confident in, something we're uncertain. In fact, some things that are even contrary to facts and reason, that we just hope things are going to work out. The Bible means something very different when it says hope. When the Bible says hope, it's talking about a confident and grounded expectation. That this isn't a wishful thinking and this isn't an I don't know. No. When you're putting your hope in something, when the Bible talks about it, it's something that you're confident in, that you're sure of. So knowing that the word means something a little bit different, When that applies to our own lives, we can see how people often put their hopes in the wrong things. Sometimes they're putting their hope in the government. The government is going to solve all my problems, and if only we just had this party or this leader elected, then everything would be okay. Sometimes we put our hope in our appearance. Sometimes we put our hope in our money. Sometimes we put our hope in our spouse or our boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that, you know what, my whole life would be better if I could just be with them. We put our hopes in all sorts of different things. Now, when the Bible talks about hope, it's important to understand that the real value of hope is not found in how much hope you have, but what you're putting your hope in. Now, it's great to have lots and lots of hope, but in the end, hope is depending on something. And the only important thing at the end of the day is, does that thing let you down or not? And putting a lot of hope into wishful thinking doesn't help. But a little bit of hope into something that's secure, that means a lot. As Christians, what we put our hope in is God and what God has done for us and is doing for us. That He's the one we put our hope in. And our expectations from Him is that He's going to continue to work in our lives to make us better. And one day, He's going to take us home to be with Him. That is something we're sure of. That is something we're confident in. Well, I'm going to read a passage here from the Bible that's going to dig right into this. And this is from Hebrews chapter 6, verses 18 to 19. And it says this: "It is impossible for God to tell a lie. Now all those who flee to Him to save them can take new courage when they hear such assurances from God. Now they can know without a doubt that He will give him the salvation He has promised them. This certain hope of being saved is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls, connecting us with God Himself behind the sacred curtains of heaven." All right, here's some questions to think about. If this is true and God is who He says He is, how dependable are God's promises to us? When we think about it rationally, how powerful is God compared to our problems? How would you feel if you put your hopes in God during the very worst part of the storms in your life? Have you personally ever experienced this kind of hope before? Now, anchors, as I said before, aren't only used in storms, but also on days with gentle breezes. How can putting your hope in God keep you from drifting off course? Are there any areas in your life where you don't put your hope in God right now? If you did use hope in God as the anchor for your soul, what do you think would change? Discuss this in your group for the next few minutes. Well, I hope you had a good discussion there. I remember many years ago when I was going to university. It was my first day in university. And I met some students that I'd seen before, but they had been going to university for longer than I had. And they were now third-year philosophy majors. And I remember them not realizing that I had become a Christian since the last time we had spoken years before. And they assumed that I was still an atheist like they were. And they had this discussion about how stupid Christians were and how ridiculous Christianity was. And while they were talking there, I felt really intimidated. These guys had been going to university for a few years. I had not. They were philosophy majors. I didn't even know what I was going to major in. And I thought if I opened my mouth, I was going to get my butt kicked. And after that discussion, and I kind of walked off with my silent tail between my legs, a thought came to me that if God Himself is my strength and my shield, And if my hope is in the Creator, well, why am I afraid of third-year philosophy majors? I realized that if my hope was truly in God, I didn't have anything to be afraid of at all. And that first day of university was the last day of university I ever walked with my head low, they ever walked with a spirit of fear. When we put our hope in God, no matter what the world throws at us, it keeps our ship going straight. And I hope that you found that today. Look forward to seeing you next week.